In 1587, 117 men, women, and children vanished without a trace from a small island off the coast of what is now North Carolina. 4 centuries later, the disappearance of the Roanoke colony remains America's oldest unsolved mystery. Was it disease, war, starvation, or something more sinister? Today, we explore the evidence behind the history's most compelling theories and the supernatural claims that continue to haunt these shores. To understand the mystery of Roanoke, we must first understand why the English came to these shores in the first place. The late 16th century was an age of exploration and competition. England's Queen Elizabeth I, eager to challenge Spanish domination in the New World, granted Sir Walter Raleigh permission to establish a colony on the North American coast. After a failed attempt in 1585, Raleigh organized a second expedition in 1587. This time, the colonists would establish a permanent settlement on the Chesapeake Bay, but fate had other plans. The fleet's pilot, Simon Ferdinand, refused to take the colonists to their intended destination. Instead, he abandoned them on Roanoke Island, the site of the previous failed colony. Led by John White, the 117 colonists, including White's daughter Eleanor and his infant granddaughter Virginia Dare, the first English-born child in America, found themselves forced to rebuild a settlement that had been abandoned 2 years earlier. When supplies ran dangerously low, White reluctantly agreed to sail back to England for provisions. He left behind his family and the colonists with a plan to return within months. But history intervened. The Spanish Armada attacked England in 1588, and all ships were commandeered for the war effort. John White found himself stranded in England, desperately seeking passage back to his colony. It was 3 long years before White finally returned to Roanoke Island in 1590. What he found, or rather what he didn't find, would become one of history's greatest enigmas. August 18th, 1590, John White stepped onto Roanoke Island for the first time in 3 years. He expected to be greeted by his daughter, to hold his granddaughter, now a toddler, in his arms. Instead, he found an eerie silence. The settlement stood empty. No colonists, no signs of struggle or attack. The houses had been dismantled in an orderly fashion, suggesting the colonists hadn't left in a panic. On one of the fort's posts, White found a single word carved into the wood: Croatoan. Nearby, the words crow was etched into a tree. Before his departure, White had arranged a secret code with the colonists. If they were forced to relocate, they would carve their destination on a tree or post. A cross would indicate they left due to the danger or under duress. There was no cross, just the word Croatoan, the name of a nearby island and its native inhabitants. White intended to search Croatoan Island, but a violent storm forced his ship to abandon the search and return to England. John White never returned to America. He never saw his family again. An excerpt from White's journal said, "I greatly joyed that I found a certain token of their being at Croatoan, which is the place where Mateo was born, and the savages of the island are our friends." But were they? The question would remain unanswered for centuries. The Roanoke colony disappearance isn't actually a mystery for most historians. What's mysterious is why the public remains so fascinated by it despite evidence pointing to likely scenarios. The most straightforward explanation follows John White's own conclusion. The colonists relocated to Croatoan Island, home to friendly natives led by Chief Manateo, who had been baptized and named Lord of Roanoke by the English. Recent archaeological findings on Hatteras Island, formerly Croatoan, led credence to this theory. European artifacts dating to the late 16th century have been discovered, including a signet ring possibly belonging to one of the colonists. An archaeologist that's been working on the dig there quoted, "What we're finding suggests cultural integration rather than conflict. The distribution of European artifacts among native dwellings indicate the colonists likely assimilated into the Croatoan society." Another compelling theory suggests the colonists moved inland to the Chesapeake Bay, their original intended destination, possibly seeking better conditions or fleeing hostile tribes. When Jamestown was established in 1607, settlers reported hearing stories of Europeans living among inland tribes. Captain John Smith recorded that Chief Potawatomi claimed to have attacked white settlers who had been living with a tribe allied to the Chesapeake Indians. The reports describe these people wearing European clothes and living in stone houses. Unfortunately, Smith's attempts to locate these settlers were unsuccessful. A grimmer theory suggests that colonists fell victim to starvation or disease. The years 1587 to 1589 coincided with the worst drought in 800 years, according to the tree ring analysis. The timing couldn't have been worse. These settlers arrived just as one of the most severe droughts in North American history was beginning. Some historians propose Spanish involvement. Spain considered the English settlements an encroachment on their territory and had destroyed the previous Roanoke settlement in 1586. Spanish documents from the period mention plans to remove the English colony, but no record confirms they actually did so. If the Spanish had attacked, however, they would have likely taken captives back to their settlement in Florida or the Caribbean. Today, DNA research offers new avenues for investigation. Several families in North Carolina, particularly among the Lumbee tribe, claim Roanoke ancestry. One geneticist said, "We're seeing genetic markers consistent with 16th century British ancestry among certain indigenous communities. It's not conclusive proof, but it strongly suggests some level of integration occurred." For centuries, the rational explanations have competed with darker theories. The complete disappearance of 117 people has inevitably spawned supernatural speculation. Some legends claim the colonists were victims of the Roanoke Lights, mysterious glowing phenomenon reported in the area since pre-colonial times. These lights, similar to the will-o'-the-wisps of European folklore, supposedly lure the settlers into the marshes to their doom. A local resident said, "My grandfather saw them when he was a boy, said they looked like lanterns floating above the marsh. Anyone who followed them never came back." Other tales describe a malevolent presence in the surrounding forest that consumed the colonists. The legend of the Roanoke vampire emerged in the 19th century, suggesting a supernatural predator had infiltrated the colony. A paranormal investigator that had investigated on the islands said, "We've recorded significant electromagnetic anomalies around the original settlement site. Something traumatic happened here, and the land remembers." A Native American storyteller said, "Our stories speak of darkness that came with the settlers. They brought something with them from across the ocean, something that didn't belong here. Some accounts suggest the colonists discovered something they shouldn't have, an ancient artifact or sacred site that brought a curse upon them. In more recent times, UFO enthusiasts have even proposed alien abduction as an explanation for the colony's disappearance, citing the lack of evidence of violence or forced removal. A paranormal book author said, "What makes Roanoke so compelling from a paranormal perspective is the completeness of the disappearance. It's as if they vanished into thin air." Today, ghost tours capitalize on the island's mysterious history, with guides reporting spectacle sightings of lost colonists, particularly a woman believed to be Eleanor Dare, searching for her father. While these supernatural theories capture the imaginations, most researchers focus on historical evidence, which points towards more mundane, if not still fascinating, explanations. For more than 80 years, the story of the lost colonists has been performed in the America's longest-running outdoor drama, simply titled The Lost Colony, on Roanoke Island. The Fort Riley historical site preserves what little remains of the original settlement, while ongoing archaeological work continues to uncover new clues. New technologies allow us to find things we couldn't detect before. Ground-penetrating radar has revealed promising anomalies that might be building foundations from the colony. In 2012, researchers examined a 16th century map, discovered a patch covering what may be the intended location of a fort inland. This fort symbol, hidden for centuries, could indicate where the colonists planned to relocate. Today, a combination of historical research, archaeological investigation, and scientific analysis offers hope that the mystery might finally be solved. The Lost Colony DNA Project seeks to identify descendants of the original colonists through genetic testing, potentially tracing lineage back to the 16th century. We're piecing together fragmentary evidence from Spanish archives, English records, and indigenous oral histories. The answers likely lies at the intersection of these sources, according to a historian familiar with the research. After more than 4 centuries, the fate of the Roanoke colonists remain America's oldest mystery. The word Croatoan stands as both a tantalizing clue and a haunting epitaph. Perhaps the colonists did find refuge among the Croatoan people, assimilating into their culture and leaving their English identity behind. Their descendants may walk among us today, unaware of their connection to one of history's greatest enigmas. Or perhaps they met a darker fate, victims of starvation, disease, conflict, or forces we only can imagine. Is that 117 souls came to these shores seeking a new beginning. In that endeavor, they became something else entirely, an enduring mystery that continues to captivate our collective imaginations. Search for answers, the lost colonists of Roanoke remind us that history is not a complete record, but a fragmented narrative with gaps we still strive to fill. Some mysteries, it seems, were meant to endure. The lost colony of Roanoke remains America's oldest mystery. If you enjoyed this longer video, please subscribe, like, and share. We will be putting these out once a week going forward.